and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 11th March 2025, wherein we'll be looking into 7 set of topics which have featured in The Hindu as well as Indian Express. Coming to the analysis section, we'll be first looking into the delimitation debate, that why we need to carry out the delimitation exercise from the point of view of representative democracy and how it is creating a lot of challenges between the center and the state. Coming to the second topic, herein we'll be looking into that why the ASHA workers are protesting on the streets of Kerala and what steps we need to take to address their grievances. Coming to the simplified section, therein we'll be looking into 5 set of topics wherein we'll try to decode the news in the most simple manner possible, and we'll also be discussing some prelim facts which would be very relevant for your upcoming prelims examination. So stay tuned. Now, coming to our first topic, wherein we are going to look into the debate related to delimitation. This topic is very relevant from our GS paper 2 perspective, basically the topic related to parliament and state legislature. Now, we need to understand first that why this whole debate is going on. Because currently an all-party meeting was organized and it was chaired by the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister. And in this all-party meeting, all the parties have made a request to the central government that the existing number of seats which have been given to different states, let's just continue that arrangement for next 30 years beyond 2026. Now, the first thing that should be coming in your mind is, what is this delimitation exercise all about? Now, in order to carry out the direct election to Lok Sabha as well as to State Legislative Assembly, we carry out the delimitation exercise, wherein we basically divide a particular state into different territorial constituencies. While doing this, we need to make sure that the ratio of population of a particular state divided by the number of seats which have been given to a particular state, this ratio needs to remain same when you talk about different states. Okay, and when you talk about dividing a particular state into different territorial constituencies, in respect to that as well, we need to make sure that the ratio of population of a particular territorial constituency divided by the number of seats that we are giving to that particular territorial constituency, this ratio needs to be remain the same with respect to all the territorial constituency with respect to a particular state. Now, this basically is related to the principle of one person, one vote and one value. This delimitation exercise is basically carried out to uphold this particular principle. Okay, although for smaller states we have given a higher number of seats as compared to their population, but this is basically under the whole arrangement of asymmetric federalism. Now, this delimitation exercise is basically being carried out by the Delimitation Commission. And this Delimitation Commission is basically, created after the Parliament passes the Delimitation Act under Article 82. Now, when I talked about this delimitation exercise, I talked about population. Which population figure are we talking about here? So, this population figure basically refers to the preceding census, okay? Whatever data has been published in the preceding census and it has been published. And when you talk about the elections to the State Legislative Assembly, the delimitation is basically done under Article 170, and herein also the delimitation would be carried out based on the Delimitation Act, which is basically passed by the Parliament. Now, since independence, Parliament has basically enacted the Delimitation Act only for 4 times, and this was asked recently in prelims. Okay, so this fact becomes important for us. Now, when I talk about Delimitation Commission, it basically consists of your retired Supreme Court judge. Then we have the Chief Election Commissioner, and then we have respective State Election Commissioner. And this Delimitation Commission basically basically works in coordination with your Election Commission of India to do the delimitation exercise. Now, why are we getting this whole debate currently? In order to understand this, we need to go into the background. So what has happened? Previously, the southern states carry out effective population control measures. But they were also fearful that although they are carrying out the population control measures and they are successful also in reducing their population growth rate, because of this, will they be penalized when it comes to political representation in the Lok Sabha? Because right now we studied that when it comes to the representation of the states in the Lok Sabha, that would be based on their population. So in order to address the fears of the southern states, what the Honorable Prime Minister then Indira Gandhi did, her government basically came up with the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. And this act actually froze the allocation of seats to different states in the Lok Sabha, and this act clearly stated that this allocation of seats to different states, I told you that when it comes to delimitation, we need to make sure that the population of that respective state and the number of seats should remain the same across different states, leaving aside the smaller states. Now for this thing, what the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act clearly stated is, now when you talk about population, here which population data we'll be using? We'll be using the population data which was published in 1971 census. And the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act clearly stated that this allocation of seats would continue till 2000. Going further, we also have 84th Constitutional Amendment Act, which again stated that when it comes to the allocation of seats to different states in the Lok Sabha, this frozen of allocation of seats that we have done in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, this would continue further till 2026. But now when it comes to dividing a particular state into different territorial constituency, I told you, for this what we do, we need to make sure that the population of a particular territorial constituency divided by the number of seats to a particular territorial constituency. In order to maintain the equality of this ratio, now when it comes to the population, we will be using the population data of 1991 census. But we are not going to change the seats which have been allocated to the different states in the Lok Sabha. Okay, we are going to use this census data of 1991 just to bring the equality when it comes to the different territorial constituency within a particular state. And that is what we are going to do when it comes to 87th Constitutional Amendment Act. We said that now when it comes to dividing a particular state in different territorial constituency, we will be using the population data of 2001 census and not the census data of 1991. Okay, so this is with regard to delimitation exercise. Now, the another thing that we need to understand is, why is it necessary to carry out the delimitation exercise? Basically, to uphold the idea of representative democracy. Let's understand how. Now, if you look at India, you can look into this particular data point as well. If you look at India, women representation in the legislature, it is hardly 15%. Global average is around 25%. Now, in order to address this scenario, what we did, we basically came up with the 106 Constitutional Amendment Act, wherein we stated that we are going to reserve 1/3 of the seats for the women, okay, when it comes to the Lok Sabha and when it comes to State Legislative Assembly. But then why I am discussing delimitation exercise here? Because in this Constitutional Amendment Act, a provision clearly states that we will be giving effect to this particular Constitutional Amendment Act only when we carry out the first census right after the next delimitation exercise. Okay, that means once we'll carrying out the delimitation exercise now, and after that delimitation, the next census when it would be conducted, only then we'll be able to give effect to this particular article, which is going to enhance the representation of women when it comes to the parliament and the state legislature. So if we do not carry out the delimitation exercise, we will not be able to realize this idea of enhancing the women representation in our legislature. Coming to the second point, we need to carry out this delimitation exercise. Why? To ensure adequate representation of our minority sections, SC and ST. Right now, what did we have seen that currently, in order to divide the territorial constituency in a particular state, which population data we are using? We are using 201 census. Now recently we discussed that when it comes to dividing a particular state into different territorial constituency, we are going to use the population figure of 2001. But what has happened? Over a period of time, the population of SC and ST has grown, and Article 330 clause 2 clearly states that when it comes to reservation of the seats for SC and ST, it should be done in proportion to their population in that respective state. Okay, total state population. But right now we discussed which population data we are using currently, 2001. But the recently conducted Bihar caste-based survey has highlighted that the percentage of SC and ST population have increased over a period of time. When you talk about SC, it has increased from roughly 16% to 19%. When you talk about ST population, it has increased from 1.2% to 1.6%. So, if we want to make sure that our minority sections are effectively represented in the legislature, we need to carry out the delimitation exercise. Then, Supreme Court has also stated that if we want to uphold the idea of democracy, we need to carry out the delimitation exercise. And this was stated by the Supreme Court in Kuldeep Nair versus Union of India case. Now, in the beginning, I told you that why do we carry out this delimitation exercise? Basically, to uphold the idea of one person, one vote and one value. But currently what is happening? One MP of UP is basically representing 3.2 million population. But when you talk about an MP of Kerala, he or she is representing 1.8 million people. So don't you think so? When it comes to the value of vote, the person who is there in Kerala, residing in Kerala, the value of vote is twice as compared to a voter in UP. So this is problematic. This is going against the principle of representative democracy. And over a period of time, we need to understand that our population have increased. And this is making it difficult for the MPs to adequately bring out the concerns of the people whom they are representing. Since we have not changed the total number of seats when it comes to Lok Sabha, what is happening? In India, one MP is basically representing the concerns of around 2.2 million people. And when you look at USA, one MP there in the lower house is basically representing 0.6 million people on an average. So don't you think so? In order to make sure that our MPs are able to adequately bring out the concerns of the citizens whom they represent, we need to increase the total seats which are there in the Lok Sabha. But there's another side to this debate. How this delimitation is creating issues between the center and the state. Now, first and foremost, we need to understand already there is, divide between the southern and the northern state because of cultural factors, especially with respect to imposition of Hindi. Northern states are basically the Hindi speaking ones. Southern states and the northeastern ones are non-Hindi speaking states. Then in the economic domain as well, we see that the southern states are performing very well and they have this concern that we are contributing more to the India's GDP, but when you talk about the horizontal devolution of the taxes, we are getting less share. Why? Just look at the weightage given to different parameters. The southern states are actually rewarded for tax efforts and demographic performance. You club the two, it roughly comes out to be 15%. When it comes to rest of the parameters, because of this, northern states are actually getting higher share when it comes to the horizontal devolution of taxes. And just imagine, if we carry out the next delimitation exercise and we adjust the number of seats according to the population of different states, don't you think so? This is going to further divide the northern and the southern states. It is going to increase the fault lines between the northern and the southern states. Now, why this is problematic? Because if we carry out the delimitation exercise and we do the readjustment when it comes to the number of seats to different states, the bigger states, basically in the northern states, would witness an increase in their seats. If you talk about UP, they'll be getting 11 additional seats, Bihar, 10 additional seats. But when you talk about the southern states, they would be losing 8 seats. So, this implies that when it comes to the political decision making, the northern states would be having more power. And this is going to further aggravate the fault lines between the northern and the southern states. Now, why this is problematic? Because if we carry out this delimitation exercise based on the current population figures, more power would be going in the hands of the northern states and southern states would be sidelined. This could basically fuel the secessionist tendencies. We need to understand that when it comes to Indian federalism model, we are not a coming together federalism model, rather we are a holding together federalism model. And if we, carry out this delimitation exercise, it would make our federalism model more fragile. So we need to watch that out. So what we can do to balance representative democracy at one hand and the federal concerns, we can adopt different ways to cope up this particular issue. We can go with the Cambridge approach, what we witness in case of European Union. So they actually increase the size of the parliament and the state legislature. What we are trying to say this, let's suppose the Kerala, I'm roughly taking an example, currently has 10% of the total number of seats in the Lok Sabha. Now we can increase the size of the parliament. This would help us in upholding the idea of representative democracy. But when we increase the size of the Lok Sabha, then also Kerala should have 10% of the seats. Okay. This would enable us to strike a balance between representative democracy and the federal concerns. Another thing that we can do is what was recommended by Punchi Commission as well, that if we are going to carry out the delimitation exercise based on the current population figure, let's just address the asymmetrical representation of the states in the Rajya Sabha. Do what we witness in USA. Every state send 2 representatives to the Senate. Let's bring equality of representation when it comes to Rajya Sabha. Or we can go by the idea of concessionary federalism. What do we mean by concessionary federalism? That means that if we are making the southern states to lose in the political domain, let's make them a winner when it comes to the economic domain. How we can do that? Let's assign higher weights to these parameters when it comes to horizontal devolution of taxes. That means we need to increase the weightage when it comes to tax effort, and we need to increase the weightage which is being given to demographic performance. And we need to reduce the weightage which is being given to population. Maybe we can reduce this weight to maybe 10 or maybe 5. So that they get higher devolution of taxes. And lastly, what we can do is we can go with the harmonizing principle. What do we mean by this? In order to strike a balance between representative democracy and federalism, what we can do? So let's just not change the allocation of seats to different states in the Lok Sabha. In order to uphold the idea of representative democracy, what we can do? Let's increase the size of state legislative assemblies to realize the idea of representative democracy. Now going further, if we want to carry out the delimitation exercise, going with the idea of one person, one vote, one value, we need to make sure that we carry out a broad consensus between the different parties, and only with a broad consensus, we should be moving in the further direction. Okay? That would make sure that our federalism model remains vibrant and viable. That's all that we need to know. I have created a practice mains question for you. So do practice this and let me know the answer in the comment section. Let's move on to the next topic. Now this next topic is related to the challenges which are being witnessed by the ASHA workers. This particular topic is related to this aspect of your GS paper 2 syllabus. Now what is the context? So for past 1 year, the ASHA workers are protesting on the streets of the capital city of Kerala. Why? Because they have yet not gotten the fair wages and equitable treatment that they deserve. Now the first thing that we need to know with regard to this whole context is, who are ASHA workers? This, aspects could be relevant for your prelims examination as well. Now where do we basically came up with this idea of ASHA workers? So in 2002, Chhattisgarh came up with a very revolutionary approach when it comes to community healthcare. What Chhattisgarh did, it basically appointed women as mita-nins. And this model was very successful, and that is why it was replicated at the central level as well. So we introduced the ASHA workers under the National Rural Health Mission in 2005 and 6. What are ASHA workers? These are accredited social health activist. And over a period of time, we also introduced ASHA workers in the urban settings as well under the Urban Health Mission in 2013. Now, can anyone be appointed as ASHA workers? The answer is no. In order to be appointed as the ASHA worker, that woman needs to be the resident of that concerned village and should be within the age bracket of 25 to 45 years, and this woman needs to be literate up to 10th grade. When you talk about the prevalence of ASHA workers, we roughly have one ASHA worker for every 1000 people, and when you talk about desert region, tribal, hilly regions, therein we have one ASHA worker per habitation based on the work. Now, what all remarkable role these ASHA workers are playing when it comes to community healthcare? So they are the first point of contact when it comes to health related needs. Whenever a child is suffering from diarrhea or somebody is suffering from malaria, so ASHA workers provide the ORS kits, okay, they provide malaria testing kits, and they also provide iron and folic acid tablets to lactating and pregnant women. Then they are also promoting awareness when it comes to health with respect to basic sanitation and hygiene practices. They also make the lactating woman aware with regard to healthy breastfeeding activities, okay, breastfeeding practices. They also play a very remarkable role when it comes to maternal health, and their contribution has been recognized by the Global Public Health Study, which has pointed out that whenever a woman is in contact with the ASHA workers, we have witnessed that because of this contact, we have witnessed 1.6 time increase in the institutional deliveries. That means the deliveries which are happening in the hospital settings and not at the home. Then they also play a very prominent role when it comes to village health and planning. They are the members of the Village Health and Sanitation Committee. They also have reporting role, so they maintain the data with regard to births, deaths, and any unusual, health related issue which is prevailing in that particular community. And the remarkable role that they have done during the COVID-19 pandemic, acting as the first line of defense when it comes to COVID-19 pandemic, this has been recognized by the WHO also. Okay, so the Director General Global Health Leaders Award in 2022 was given to the ASHA workers. Why? For their outstanding contribution towards protecting and promoting health during the pandemic. But despite the remarkable role these ASHA workers are playing, they are witnessing a lot of challenges. Even today, they are still treated as volunteers. They are not treated like a permanent government employee. So when you talk about their salaries, it varies from 5,000 to 15,000, and when you talk about the state of Kerala, they hardly get 7,000 a month. And they get a very meager salary from the center, and they usually get incentive-based payments, okay? And those incentives are basically shared between the center and the state. Incentive-based payment as in if they are taking the woman to the institutional setting, so for institutional deliveries, they would be provided some incentive. But in majority of the states, for example, if you talk about Kerala, even this meager payment is being delayed. So that is a problem. Then there is casualization of their work. Right now I told you they are still treated as volunteers. They are not considered to be as permanent government employees. Because of this, they are not getting the benefits which are available to permanent government employees, like maternity benefits, like health insurance benefits, retirement benefits, fixed working hours. Okay, so all these benefits are not available to ASHA workers. And the irony is, the ASHA workers who have actually played a remarkable role when it comes to increasing the institutional deliveries, they are the ones who are not getting any sort of maternity benefits. Then over a period of time, with the help of technology, we have expanded their work, so they have to maintain a lot of data, and they are working for approximately 12 to 14 hours a day. And this, at times make them vulnerable to anemia, malnutrition as well. Why? Because they have triple shift burden. So they also have to manage their household responsibility, they are taking care of maternal and child health, and they are also looking into the health problems which are prevalent in a community. Okay, so they are also looking into the community healthcare. Then there is a lot of marginalization. So if they belong to lower caste, so because of that they face discrimination, and obviously since they are female, they face gender-based discrimination. And why this issue becomes very important? Because despite performing a very great role when it comes to community healthcare, we don't have any effective grievance redressal mechanism wherein they can raise their issues, okay? What kind of discrimination they are facing because of being a female and because they belong to a lower caste. And even today, although at the global level WHO have recognized their work, global studies have recognized their work, but when you talk about India, we have still not recognized their work. We are not giving them adequate support. Even the meager salaries that they are getting, we are not providing that at the regular interval. Okay. Then what needs to be done in this particular backdrop? First and foremost, center government needs to release their wages. Okay. And we need to formalize their employment status so that they could get the other social security benefits which are available to the permanent government employees as well. And we need to recognize and as well as reward their work. So we can come up with certificates of appreciation, public recognition ceremonies and performance-based bonuses as well. This would, incentivize them to, further perform a very great role when it comes to community healthcare. We should also provide them the opportunities for career advancements so that they could be upgraded to ANMs. And we need to make sure that they get a very safe and conducive environment to work. In that regard, we need to make sure that if they suffer any sort of discrimination, be it based on caste, be it based on gender, we need to make sure that we have an effective grievance redressal mechanism in place wherein they can raise their concerns and the concerned authorities can take proactive actions in that regard. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. We have a practice question. So do practice this question and let me know your answer in the comment section. Let's move on to the simplified section. Now, coming to the first topic of the simplified section. Recently, the Rajya Sabha has passed the Railway Amendment Bill. This topic becomes relevant from your economy section in the prelims. Now, whatever is important with regard to this particular article, I have highlighted here for your reference, and this is something you will be also getting in your handouts as well. Let's decode this news in a systematic manner. So, when it comes to Lok Sabha has already passed this particular bill in last year in December. Rajya Sabha has passed this bill recently. Now, in the House, opposition has raised a lot of concerns with regard to railways. First and foremost, they have raised the concern with regard to railway safety. Why? Because of the recent stampede that we witnessed on the Delhi railway station in the backdrop of Mahakumbh Mela. And they also pointed out to the Balasore accident that we witnessed in Odisha in 2023, wherein 3 trains collided with each other. And this was a very tragic accident when you talk about railway. They also raised concern with regard to increased fares and the quality of services, and they raised concerns with regard to centralization of the railway board appointment, because according to the provisions of this railway amendment bill, now it would be the central government which would be looking into all the matters that what would be the mode of appointment when it comes to the chairman and the members of the railway board, what would be their service condition, what would be their qualification and experience, etc. So in this backdrop, the opposition has pointed out that everything is decided by the center and there is lack of parliamentary oversight when it comes to the the management of the railway boards. So in this backdrop, the opposition parties have made a request that please send this particular bill to concerned parliamentary committee. Now, in this backdrop of opposition parties raising a lot of concerns with regard to railways, the railway minister has pointed out what all steps the government of India has taken. So firstly, he pointed out the budgetary outlays, wherein the government has promised that they would be allocating 1 lakh crore per year for upgradation of infrastructure when it comes to railways. The railway minister has pointed out that over a period of time, we will be establishing access control in all the railway stations so that we do not witness this tragic incident that we witnessed on the Delhi railway stations. Okay, wherein only the people who would be having the confirmed tickets, only those people would be allowed to go to the railway platforms, not the people who don't have confirmed tickets. This would be enabling us to manage the population effectively at the platforms. Then he pointed out that we have increased the fog safety devices, which is going to improve the railway safety in the long run. So in 2014, we hardly had 90 fog safety devices. We have increased it to 26,000. Then he also pointed out that how we are upgrading the railway infrastructure. So he pointed out that we have replaced this much of the old railway lines and we have put in place this many new tracks. And this would go a long way in increasing the railway safety. And when you talk about greenhouse gas emission, the railway minister has pointed out that when it comes to this much amount of railway track, we have done the electrification. This would help us in reducing the greenhouse gas emission up till 95%. Now, we need to understand what are the key provisions of the Railway Amendment Bill. Why we have brought this particular bill? Basically to unify the legal framework when it comes to Indian Railways. So we have repealed this Indian Railway Board Act of 1905 and we have actually merged it with the provisions of Railway Act of 1989. But the question is why? Basically to provide the statutory status to Railway Board. And now, as we have discussed, the central government would be deciding that how many numbers of members should be there when it comes to Railway Board, what should be their qualification, experience, terms, conditions of service, and how they would be appointed when it comes to chairman and members of the board, Railway Board. Then the bill also talks about putting in place an independent regulator, and this independent regulator would be overseeing the issues related to tariffs and the safety of the passengers, and it would also be looking into the participation of private sector in the railways. Then with the help of this particular bill, the government is also going to increase the autonomy of railway zone. In this backdrop, the railway minister has pointed out, with the help of this bill, now the zonal general managers would be able to accept the contract worth 1000 crore and they can also sanction projects up to 50 crore. Lastly, in this particular bill, we are also going to improve the infrastructure so that over a period of time, we can see super fast trains. Okay, and we'll also be enhancing the critical route for Arunachal Express so that we can improve the connectivity between mainland India and the northeastern states. Okay, that's all that we need to know with regard to this particular article. Let's move on to the next one. Now coming to our next article, which is related to the trade agreement between India and USA and how it is going to violate the WTO principles. This topic becomes relevant from our economy section of our prelim syllabus. Now, whatever is relevant with regard to this particular article, I have highlighted for your particular reference, and this you will be able to find in the handout. Let's understand this particular news in a systematic manner. Now, if you people have been following the newspaper, you must be aware of this particular announcement done by the Trump administration that they are going to, impose reciprocal tariff on all of their trading partners, irrespective of their level of development. That means, does not matter whether the goods belong to developing countries or the goods belong to developed countries. If even the developing countries like India, if they are imposing higher tariffs on the American goods, then USA would also be increasing the tariff rates. You can look into this particular data point as well. If you see the agriculture goods, if you talk about the US tariffs on agriculture goods of India, it is roughly around 5%. And when you look into the American goods which are coming in Indian market, they are facing a tariff rate of 37%. So there's a tariff differential of around 32%. So reciprocal tariff basically means now if we do not reduce, India does not reduce the tariff rate when it comes to agriculture goods coming from American market, then what we are going to witness, the Trump administration would also increase the tariff on India's agriculture goods from roughly 5% to 37%. Okay, so reciprocal tariff basically means the Trump administration is going to match the tariff rate which is being charged on the other country on the American goods. Now, the writer has pointed out that this recent announcement done by the Trump administration is going to violate a lot of WTO principles. Let's look into what kind of principles we are talking about. So the first principle is most favored nation principle. According to this principle, you cannot discriminate between different trading partners. And since the Trump administration would be tweaking the tariff rates based on the tariffs which are being imposed by the other countries on American goods. So the Trump administration might be charging different tariff rates on different goods coming from different countries. So this is going to violate the most favored nation principle. Then this decision of Trump administration is also going to violate the special and differential treatment principle of WTO. This implies that if USA being a developed country, if it is imposing less amount of tariff on India's agriculture good, that does not mean that India also need to reduce its tariff rate to the same level which USA is imposing on Indian goods. Okay, so this principle basically implies that developing countries do not need to reciprocate fully, okay, with respect to what tariffs their goods are facing in the developed markets. So according to WTO, there is no such obligation on India that if USA is imposing a tariff rate of 5% when it comes to India's agriculture good, India also need to reduce the tariff on US agriculture products till to 5%. There is no such obligation on India. Then it is going to violate the USA bound tariff rate obligation. See, whenever a country becomes a member of WTO, they make a commitment with regard to bound tariff rates. What are these bound tariff rates? This is the maximum most favored nation tariff rate which a country can impose on different goods and services. Now, if USA is going to increase the tariff rates when it comes to the different countries, USA would be violating its bound tariff rate obligation which it has with the WTO. And what if USA is going to breach this particular obligation which is legal binding? So in that regard, the other WTO members can go to the dispute resolution mechanism of WTO and they can also adopt retaliatory measures and they could also get compensation from USA. Now, in this whole debate, Indian policymakers are very hopeful that we'll be able to escape this higher tariff rate when it comes to Trump administration. Why? Because we are in negotiation when it comes to multi-sector bilateral trade agreement, which the policymakers have highlighted that we'll be finalizing it by 2025. But the writer has pointed out that this multi-sector bilateral trade agreement is going to violate the WTO principles, basically the most favored nation principle. As the scope of this particular agreement is not clear, that which all commodities it is going to cover, in which commodities we are going to reduce the tariff rate, and are we going in the direction of free trade agreement or not. So this basically violates your most favored nation principle of WTO, which is the most important principle as well. The writer is pointing out what options is available before India as well as USA administration. So one option is provided in GATT, that is substantially all the trade. That means if two nations A and B are entering into free trade agreement, then they need to lower their guards, basically the tariff and other sort of barriers, with respect to majority of goods and services. But what is the problem when it comes to this multi-sector BTA which is going to be signed between India and USA? The problem is we are going to sign it for limited products. We are not going to lower our guards with respect to majority of goods and services. And if you are not going to lower the guard with respect to majority of goods and services, that means you are giving differential treatment to one country only and you are not extending this treatment to other countries. So this violates your most favored nation principle. Right now what we discussed, most favored nation principle basically means you have to treat all the countries equally. You cannot discriminate between your trade partners. Then can we have another option that we sign the BTA with respect to limited number of products and then also it does not violate the WTO principle? The answer is yes. If we adopt the interim agreement approach, which is again given under GATT. Now what is this interim agreement approach? See, two countries who are going to sign a free trade agreement, they would not be signing this free trade agreement within 1 year. It would take a lot amount of time to carry out the negotiations. So in this respect, the countries can use this interim agreement approach, wherein they would be informing to the WTO that we are, currently signing a bilateral trade agreement with respect to limited goods, and over a period of time, within a reasonable amount of time, that is 10 years, we will be finalizing a free trade agreement. But there are issues with respect to this approach as well. What is the issue? If we use this interim agreement approach, this would enable us to buy a lot of time. Okay, you will be getting 10 years. For 10 years, no legal action would be taken against you. But if India and USA is not going to negotiate or move towards formalizing a free trade agreement, then after this reasonable time frame, that is 10 years, we will be facing legal challenges before WTO. Then is there any other option available beyond this? Yes, we have enabling clause of WTO. So if a developed country lowers the tariff rate and provide better market access to the goods which are emerging from the developing economies, then this clause can be used, and then you will not be violating the most favored nation principle. But there is a problem with this as well when you talk about USA-India bilateral trade agreement. Why? Because here not only US is asking India also, which is a developing economy, to lower the tariff rates so that USA products could get a better market access in Indian markets. So again, it could not be used. So in this whole backdrop, the writer is pointing out that since India is a champion of rule-based trading order, it would be interesting to look into that how India, manages the pressure being put by the Trump administration and how it would prevent the dilution of WTO principle. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now this next topic is with regard to short selling norms. SEBI is planning to tweak the short selling norms. This particular topic becomes relevant from our economy section prelims. Now whatever is relevant, I have highlighted for your reference. Now first and foremost, what we need to understand is what is short selling. So a person would be, normally what we understand is how do you make profits in the stock market or in the share market. If I buy a share at, let's suppose, 100 rupees, and if I'm able to sell that share at 150 rupees, I'll be making a profit of 50 rupees. But short selling is different. How this mechanism works? Let's just understand. Now, this person who is engaging in short selling does not actually own the share. He or she is actually borrowing the share from the broker. In the morning, let's suppose, he or she has borrowed 10 shares of ABC company and he or she has sold that at a price of 500 rupees. Okay, and he or she would be selling it at 500 rupees and by the evening he or she would be buying the same shares at 400 rupees. So on every share making a profit of 100 rupees. And once he buy the shares, he would be returning that share to the broker. Now you can very well understand that the person who is doing the short selling does not actually own the share. He or she has borrowed that share from a broker. Okay. And why this person is engaging in short selling? Because he has some insider information that in that single day or within 1 or 2 days, the prices of the share of that particular company is going to fall. Okay. So that is why this short selling is problematic. Now what all changes SEBI is planning to do? So SEBI is planning that it would be allowing the short selling with respect to all the stocks except which are related to trade segment. Then the disclosure requirements which were there with regard to institutional as well as retail investor, SEBI is planning to do away with that. And when the institutional and retail investor fail to disclose with regard to the short selling, then certain penalties were imposed on them, and that also SEBI is planning to do away with. Broker and exchanges may not need to publish weekly short sales data. Now in order to address short selling, what SEBI is planning to do? So it has come up with the push for direct payment security. Now what we discussed here, this person was able to engage in short selling even before that stock or share start reflecting in his or her demat account, and he borrowed the share and then he sold that. But under the push for direct payment payout of security, you cannot sell a particular share until and unless it starts reflecting in your demat account. Okay, and it would start getting reflected after T+1 trade cycle, settlement cycle. So if you have bought the share today on Wednesday, let's suppose, it would start showing in your demat account on Thursday. So until and unless it starts showing in your demat account, you cannot sell that particular share. And that is how SEBI would be curbing this short selling practice. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move to the next one. Now this next topic is related to presidential rule. This is relevant from our polity section. Now whatever is important I have highlighted. So recently the Business Advisory Committee has taken a decision that 1 hour we will be allocating to discuss that whether the presidential rule resolution with regard to Manipur should be approved or not. Now, in this backdrop, we need to understand what is President's rule, okay? And this becomes important from your upcoming prelims examination as well. Now, first thing that we need to understand is on what grounds the central government actually imposes the President rule. Now, under Article 355, a duty has been bestowed on the Union government that it has to protect the states from external aggression as well as internal disturbance. And it has to make sure that the governance in a particular state is carried out in accordance with the constitutional provisions. So, in the backdrop of this particular duty which has been given to the central government by the constitution, if there is a failure of the constitutional machinery in the state, then the central government actually imposes the President rule. And this the President can impose based on the report of the governor or otherwise as well. Otherwise, in which situation? Another ground is mentioned under Article 365, wherein the state fails to comply with or fails to give effect to any of the direction given by the central government. In this backdrop, it would be sufficient for the President to be satisfied that the condition has arisen wherein the governance in the particular state cannot be carried out in accordance with the constitutional provisions. Now, another aspect that we need to understand is with regard to parliamentary approval. So, from the date the President has proclaimed President rule, within 2 months, both houses of the parliament has to approve it. What happens if the Lok Sabha is not in the house? It has been dissolved. Then in the meantime, Rajya Sabha would be approving this proclamation, and this proclamation would remain in force even after 30 days after the first sitting of the newly constituted Lok Sabha. Okay, so within this time frame, the Lok Sabha, newly constituted Lok Sabha would be approving this particular approval. Okay, President proclamation. Then this parliamentary approval needs to be done by simple majority. Now, one question I want to ask to you is, if on a particular day 400 members are there, but out of the 400 members only 300 actually voted, then what number would be actually considered to be a simple majority? Let me know in the comment section, all of you. Because simple majority basically implies the majority of the members present and voting. So just keep this thing in mind and let me know that in this case, the scenario that I have given to you, how many numbers would be considered to be simple majority. Coming back to our discussion. So President rule can be in force for a maximum period of 3 years. Okay, but after every 6 months, we need parliamentary approval, and this repeated parliamentary approval again would be done by simple majority only. But 44th Constitutional Amendment Act has created a safeguard in this regard as well. 44th Constitutional Amendment Act clearly stated that President rule in a particular state can be extended beyond 1 year, only if 2 conditions are satisfied. First condition is if the national emergency is under proclamation in the entire country or in that particular state or any part of that particular state, or if the Election Commission of India certifies that it would be very difficult to hold the general election when it comes to that particular state legislative assembly. If these conditions are satisfied, only then you can extend the President rule in a particular state beyond 1 year, and the maximum time period is 3 years. Now, coming to its revocation, so its revocation can be done by the President anytime with a subsequent proclamation. What are the consequences of President rule? This becomes important because previously UPSC has asked a question in this regard. So, whenever the President rule is in operation, the President assumes the functions of the state government as well as the executive power vested in the governor and other authorities. The state legislature's powers are basically exercised by the Parliament, and the Council of Ministers in the state would be dismissed. Okay, so this is for sure. Whenever the President rule would be enforced, the Council of Ministers would be dismissed. But what is the situation with State Legislative Assembly? So when you talk about State Legislative Assembly, it can be suspended or it can be dissolved. See, when it comes to the judiciary in S.R. Bommai judgment, Supreme Court has provided the clarification that once the President has proclaimed the President rule, from that time period, State Legislative Assembly would be suspended. It would be dissolved only when the parliament, the two houses of the parliament, approve the precedent rule. Okay, only then it would be dissolved. So what happens if the president has proclaimed precedent rule but the parliament do not approve the precedent rule? So in that case, we can revive this suspended State Legislative Assembly. So keep this prelim pointer in your mind, okay, that it's not for sure that if precedent rule is proclaimed, then the State Legislative Assembly would be dissolved only. It can be suspended also. Then when you talk about the other consequences, governor on behalf of the president would be administering the state with the help of chief secretary. Okay. Then the president can suspend constitutional provisions with respect to any body or authority of the state. For example, local bodies, Panchayati Raj institutions, municipality. But does this mean that the president can suspend the constitutional provisions with respect to High Court also? The answer is no. Okay. So there would be no impact on High Court's power even when the precedent rule is under operation in a particular state. This is basically being done to ensure the independence of the judiciary. Then the parliament gets the power to pass the state legislative bills as well as the budget, and that is what is happening currently. Then the president can issue ordinances for the state when the parliament is not in session, and the parliament can delegate the authority to legislate for the state to the president or any other authority. That's all that we need to know. I have put in a PYQ which was asked by UPSC in 2017. Do practice this question and let me know the answer in the comment section. Let's move further. Now coming to the last article that we are going to discuss, this is basically talking about quick commerce, and this becomes relevant from the economy section. Now whatever is relevant, again I have highlighted for your reference. We will be decoding this particular article in a systematic manner. The first thing that we need to understand is, what is this quick commerce all about? I'm sure every one of you would have ordered some or the other product either from Blinkit, Swiggy, Instamart or Zepto, who basically give you a promise that we will be delivering the product at your doorstep within 10 to 20 minutes. So it is basically these kinds of app which are referred to be as quick commerce. These are basically a subclass of e-commerce. Now we need to understand that this quick commerce basically emerged when the lockdown was imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. So thought would be coming in your mind that, ma'am, lockdown has been done away with. Then why they are still performing so good? The reason being, they have changed the way how you shop, especially in the urban settings. Let's understand how. Now, how do they function? So they basically function with a wide network of dark stores and the inventory stores. So dark stores basically act as a warehouses wherein no in-person shopping would be done. So these are basically maintained to maintain the inventory. Okay. And they also make use of the data which is there in their app to give you a very customized shopping experience. And that is how they are impacting how people shop. How? They would be doing the inventory management, keeping in mind your shopping experience, what are the products the people in a particular area are ordering. What is the demographic? If let's suppose more youth are there and these apps are basically used by the younger population, so they would maintain the inventory of, let's suppose, Coke, and maybe they would be maintaining the inventory with regard to protein shakes, diet foods, etc. because we are witnessing a shift in the consumer preferences when it comes to goods. And based on seasonal factors also, they will be managing their inventory stocks. Okay, if there is summer season, they'll stock a lot of ice creams, different flavors. And if it is winter season, they would maintain a lot of stocks of, fresh garlic and soups, etc. So they are very smart when it comes to managing the inventory. Okay. Then they are thriving. Why? Because they have low cost workforce. And the study which was done by IMM Ahmedabad has pointed out that these quick commerce are also beneficial for different brands. How come? Now let's suppose if the brand, a particular company wants to promote its product, okay, so it would have to distribute that product to the kirana stores, and if that product needs to be maintained under the cold environment, then it has to bear that expenditure also. What if these products are not sold? But when you talk about quick commerce, they don't have to bear this particular cost, and as and when there will be demand, they would be supplying that particular thing. Okay, and with the help of these, quick commerce, it is a kind of promotion for that particular brand. For example, in these quick commerce website, you will be easily able to find the bigger brands like Pampers if you want to order the diapers, not the smaller ones. Okay, so it is also beneficial for the companies if they want to promote their brands. Now, currently, this particular sector is valued at 3.34 billion and it is expected to grow to 9.95 billion by 2029. And this sector is witnessing a growth rate of 76% year on a year basis. But if everything is going good, why is it so that the NGOs have went to the Competition Commission of India to raise concerns with regard to these quick commerce website? Because of their operation, the brick and mortar shops, which forms the backbone of the Indian economy, they are getting impacted. How? Because these quick commerce apps are actually making use of predatory pricing tactics. What is predatory pricing? So they are giving you very deep discounts. Why? Because they have a lot of money coming from venture capitalists, from the FDI. And by deep discount, they are reducing the price, okay, normal price till this level. Why they are doing this? So that the other competitors are wiped out of the market, because these brick and mortar shops, they cannot provide you this much of discount. They have to, ultimately cover the cost of, production. So once the competitors are wiped out of the market, then what they do? They'll be increasing the prices to recoup or to cover the losses. So this is problematic. Then they are using differential pricing mechanism also. So based on your location, it might happen that if you are far away, they'll be charging you higher price. If you are very close to their, dark stores, they'll be giving you less price, the product at less price. And they would be also, looking into the app data to figure out what is your specific purchasing behavior. Let's suppose on a regular basis, you order a particular product. So after a multiple, purchases, they might be providing you the same product at a higher price. Okay, because you have become habitual of using that particular app. Okay, so all these things are problematic. Ultimately, all these tactics which are used by these quick commerce website is impacting the brick and mortar shops, which forms the backbone of our Indian economy. That's all that we need to learn from today's analyst. Thank you for watching this particular session, and happy Holi to all of you. All the very best to all of you. Don't forget to practice the quiz which would be coming up right next. Keep smiling, keep learning.